back again. This time in Pro Tools, because it's time to score another short animation. What's up guys, how you doing? As you can see, I've got some cool project footage in the background here, so here's what I'm working on. Another animation student reached out to me recently hoping to get an original score. This one was actually really cool because they'd already added in some sound effects, so once I started putting in music, I think it really came to life. Even just small audio things like that can make a huge difference. Especially to me because all the animations I've done up until now have just been dead silent. This short intrigued me because it's about this kid working in a deli where all the meat orders are coming to life and it's very ominous. Perfect for music. And once I had this thing set up in Pro Tools and all nicely tempo mapped, it was time to start cooking. Unlike pretty much all the other scores I've done like this, the animator didn't actually have any particular tracks for me to use as a reference. That'll usually be one of the first things I ask for when people reach out. They just said they wanted something a little more subtle. I was at work at the time, so I snuck into the back to give it a watch, and I immediately suggested taking it in a more horror-style direction. I thought this would be an awesome way to use some pads to keep that subtle ambience going, while also adding some more character to the visuals, with like the instruments that I like. I also think it suited the color palette of the animation too. When I started writing, I actually skipped the intro and jumped to the middle section with the spooky stuff. This way I could play on what I had later when making the more normal scenes. And while I'm writing this, I wanted to share a bit of my thought process for writing horror music, as it's a little different from normal, but mostly the same. In college, we had tons and tons of hours worth of horror and sound design lectures. I think my professor just really enjoyed that stuff, which, good for him, because those were usually the longest lessons for me personally. Creating sounds from scratch was kind of like this barrier for entry for me, because I just wanted to write the music, Like, I explain it to people this way. I want to play a piano, but I don't care to physically build one from the ground up. Same kind of thinking, I think. So I'd write down all my exact edits in Serum and Vital for the horror synths, just as we learned them in class. And then I would take those exact steps every time and focus on how I could use my simple presets to get the most character out of a score. I never did anything outstanding with my synth design itself, but my stuff was always pretty well received because I composed in interesting ways, if that makes sense. And nowadays, since I don't have to prove that I understand something for school, I just use synths that are already made or just simple presets I already have. I also like to use orchestral instruments as much as I can in horror just because I love them. Yeah, I use my orchestral stuff, but I try to blend in those modern drones because I think that's what people kind of associate with horror music nowadays. And the two things together, the old and the new, sounds so good. Whenever I'm writing horror music, I go into full chromatic mode. This means that I ignore key signatures completely and just use whatever notes get the vibe across best. It doesn't need to sound pretty, after all. It needs to be all tension. But in order to achieve that musical tension, I always make sure to have some proper release in less spooky parts of the score. Playing so many parts chromatic not only gives you like a million note combinations, but also is a little more unexpected sounding, which is perfect for horror. I ended up using a lot of vibraphone in this score, which I totally didn't expect. I initially just wanted to use it as a cue for whenever the protagonist gets a new order. But I ended up experimenting with a bunch of different cues and using the sound for other parts of the score as well. It just sounded cool, so I did it. I would never associate vibraphone with deli meat coming alive, or really anything horror for that matter, but after hearing it in action, I think I got it to work. I also think that having a more reserved palette of sounds can help with the piece's identity. Having just a handful of sounds that are easily recognizable as that thing gives it so much more character and consistency, in my opinion. That's true with, I'd say, any composition, but maybe especially true for horror. And I was still keeping that requested subtlety in mind, so I used some simple pizzicato strings that later played in with some staccato parts. No sweeping, beautiful legatos this time. I personally find that simplicity is best for spooky music. Even with the chromatic melodies, simple stuff is good, as it's easy to overdo it with chromatics and almost get this goofy sound. Even the pads I'm using are only holding an F all the way through, not even a chord. I do find these big pad drones pretty necessary because they really help fill in the space of the score. Actually, with all my film scores, they kind of feel empty for a while. That's why I'm always jumping around a lot, filling in stuff as I go, all over the place. A little detail I really like in this score is how the animation's theme or motif starts off pretty happy in the beginning, and then with each phase of things escalating, that same motif gets more chromatic. The F at the beginning of the phrase pretty much always stays the same, but the C and G go flat, and by the end of it, there's a bunch of extra chromatic notes. I love motif details like this, and I always promise myself to keep doing things like that. I don't want to just produce a pure, scary ambience. It has to have some personality, you know? If I ever make it big as a composer, I'm bringing back motifs and melodies. As I feel a lot of modern films are just kind of filled with mood setter type music, you know? But yeah, I love animations. As someone who loves to draw and stuff, I'm very appreciative of everything that goes into animation. I really like the character design in this one too, especially the eyes. They're really adorable and expressive. Yeah, I really feel what this poor kid is going through in this animation. The eyes definitely play a big part in that, but also, a fun fact about me, back when I was in high school, one of my part-time jobs was actually working in a deli. It wasn't a haunted one, but I definitely had to do some dirty work and, prepping all these meats and raw foods and stuff. So I definitely feel it. But regardless, it might have looked kind of whack on the outside. It was actually probably the best non-music job I've ever had. And the only reason I left was when I moved out for college. I really enjoyed working there. Yeah, it was actually pretty good. We did have a pretty spooky looking fridge thing like in this animation though too, full of meat hanging from the walls and stuff. Yeah, when you're prepping some of the stuff sometimes, I definitely had days where I looked like this kid here. Bro, power through, you got this. The Karens don't stand a chance against all your foodie knowledge. Yeah, she's got gloves on, she'll be fine. But yeah, anyway, you might be wondering why I do so many of these random student animations. That's because my music college also had an animation division. While I was there, I made it pretty known to the whole campus that I wanted videos to practice on pretty early on. Not only that, but I wanted to build up my portfolio as early as possible. So I became pretty well known on campus for doing all these scores, as well as tutoring a bunch of music-related stuff. And now, even after graduating, the professors send students my way whenever they need some music. As far as I know, at the time I was there, I was the only one doing it. So now my portfolio and demo reel are overflowing with student-made projects, but I still offer to do it because it's fun. And because every student animation I've done has been so different from each other, it's perfect for showing off all the things I can write and have learned. Once I was getting to the final stages of writing, I started mixing, added the sound effects back in, and started bouncing to test the score's LUFS. Since this is a short movie, I mixed it all to the standard -27 integrated LUFS. LUFS stands for Loudness Unit Full Scale, and integrated means that that's the average volume over the whole duration of the audio. -27 is actually pretty quiet, so lots of headroom in there, but that's what Netflix does, and I think it's a good happy medium for this stuff. And yeah, I think it sounds pretty good. Why don't we watch it? Pretty fun, right? I think the concept is cool. And also, look at the credits. Awesome design. Look at my name in there. So cool. And that was the production of this score. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this one, I'd love if you shared it with a friend, or check out some of my other behind-the-scenes videos. I'm trying to grow this channel before this spring, so I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks again for watching and chilling with me. And cheers, guys!